Marcus Chen had always considered himself average. At 32, he worked as a maintenance engineer on Luna Station, fixing air recyclers and gravity generators while dreaming of something more exciting than routine repairs. He never imagined that excitement would come in the form of a massive alien spacecraft appearing outside his viewport one Tuesday morning. The vessel stretched for kilometers, its crystalline hull refracting starlight into prismatic rainbows. Unlike anything in human design databases, it moved with fluid grace despite its enormous size. Within hours, first contact protocols activated across the Sol system as humanity scrambled to respond to their first alien visitors. Marcus watched the news feeds from the station's common area, surrounded by his fellow engineers and technicians. The aliens called themselves the Zalari Consortium, a galactic federation spanning thousands of worlds and species. Their representatives spoke flawless English through translation devices, explaining they had been observing humanity for decades. "They want to invite us to join their government," announced Captain Rodriguez, Luna Station's commanding officer. "But there are conditions. They're requesting cultural exchange representatives from Earth." The selection process began immediately. Earth's governments worked frantically to choose delegates who would represent humanity's best qualities. Scientists, diplomats, artists, and scholars submitted applications while the world held its breath. Marcus never considered applying until his supervisor, Janet Walsh, burst into the maintenance bay where he was calibrating a thermal regulator. "Chen, you need to see this," she said, pulling up a holographic display. "The Zalari sent a specific request. They want someone with your exact qualifications." Marcus stared at the alien text scrolling across the screen, automatically translated into English. The requirements seemed impossibly specific: male, between 30 and 35 years old, engineering background, proficiency in multiple human languages, unmarried, and possessing what the translation rendered as harmonious life force patterns. "This has to be a coincidence," Marcus muttered, but Janet shook her head. "Look at the biometric specifications." She highlighted several lines of data. "Height, weight, even genetic markers. They're describing you exactly." The implications sent chills down Marcus's spine. Had the aliens been watching him specifically? The thought of being observed without his knowledge was unsettling, but the opportunity was undeniable. How many humans would ever get the chance to travel to alien worlds? 3 days later, Marcus found himself aboard a shuttle heading toward the Zalari vessel. Earth's finest diplomatic minds had briefed him extensively, though they admitted knowing little about what awaited him. The Zalari had been polite but vague about the purpose of the cultural exchange. The shuttle bay of the alien ship was vast enough to house a small city. As Marcus stepped out in his environmental suit, he was struck by the architecture's organic curves and the soft, pulsing light that emanated from the walls themselves. Zalari crew members approached him, their tall, graceful forms moving with an elegance that seemed almost choreographed. The Zalari resembled elongated humans in basic structure, but their skin held an iridescent quality that shifted colors with their emotions. Their faces were angular, with large, multifaceted eyes that seemed to hold depths of ancient wisdom. The leader of the group wore elaborate ceremonial robes that flowed like liquid starlight. "Welcome, Marcus Chen of Earth," the leader said, their voice carrying musical undertones. "I am Ambassador Vex High. We have waited long for your arrival." Marcus bowed awkwardly, unsure of proper protocol. "Thank you for this opportunity. I'm honored to represent humanity." Vex High's eyes shifted to a warm golden hue. "You misunderstand your purpose here, but that will become clear in time. For now, you must rest and prepare. Tomorrow, you will be presented to the Queen." The quarters assigned to Marcus surpassed anything he had experienced. The room seemed to respond to his thoughts, adjusting lighting and temperature automatically. The walls displayed slowly shifting patterns that induced a sense of calm. A food synthesizer provided meals tailored to human nutritional needs, though the flavors were unlike anything from Earth. That night, Marcus lay awake wondering about the Queen. The Zalari had mentioned her several times during his briefing, but always in reverent tones that suggested she was more than just a political leader. Earth's intelligence agencies knew little about Zalari government structure beyond the fact that they were ruled by a monarchy that commanded respect across thousands of species. The next morning, Vex High returned wearing even more elaborate ceremonial attire.
It is time, they announced. The Queen will see you now.
Marcus dressed in his best formal clothes, a simple black suit that suddenly felt inadequate.
As they walked through the ship's corridors, he noticed increased activity among the crew. Zalari personnel lined the passages, bowing respectfully as they passed.
The atmosphere held an almost religious reverence. They entered a massive chamber that took Marcus's breath away. The ceiling stretched impossibly high, supported by pillars that seemed to grow from the floor like crystalline trees.
Bioluminescent patterns flowed along the walls in mesmerizing waves.
At the far end of the chamber sat a throne that appeared to be carved from a single enormous gemstone. The Queen rose as they approached, and Marcus felt his world shift. She was stunning beyond description, her form more human-like than other Zalari he had encountered. Her skin held a soft silver luminescence, and her eyes were deep pools of violet that seemed to look directly into his soul. Long, flowing hair cascaded down her back like spun moonlight.
Your Majesty, Vexai said, dropping to one knee. I present Marcus Chen of Earth. Marcus followed suit, kneeling before the throne.
His heart hammered in his chest as he felt her gaze upon him. Rise, the Queen said, her voice like music made tangible.
Let me look upon you properly.
Marcus stood on shaking legs, meeting her eyes for the first time. The intensity of her gaze made him feel exposed, as if she were reading every thought and memory he had ever possessed.
Yet there was kindness there too, and something else he could not identify.
You are as the prophecies foretold, she said softly.
Tell me, Marcus Chen, do you know why you are here?
To serve as a cultural exchange representative, Marcus replied, his voice barely steady. To help our species understand each other.
A gentle smile played across the Queen's lips. That is what your people believe, yes. But there is more to your presence here than simple diplomacy.
She descended from her throne, moving with fluid grace.
Walk with me.
They left the throne room together, the Queen leading Marcus through corridors he had not seen before. These passages were more intimate, decorated with artwork that seemed to tell stories he could not understand. The Queen walked close beside him, close enough that he could smell her subtle perfume, reminiscent of exotic flowers. For 3,000 years, my people have searched the galaxy for something we had lost, she began, her voice taking on a storytelling cadence. Long ago, before we reached for the stars, we possessed a connection to what you might call magic.
A harmony between consciousness and the universe itself.
Marcus listened intently, fascinated despite his confusion about why she was sharing this with him. As we advanced technologically, we lost this connection. We gained the ability to travel between stars but lost something far more precious. Our souls became incomplete. She paused, looking at him with those mesmerizing violet eyes. For millennia, our oracles have prophesied the coming of one who would restore this balance. A being from a young species, possessed of the harmonious life force we had lost. They entered a garden chamber filled with plants from dozens of worlds. Crystalline waterfalls created a soothing symphony as exotic flowers released gentle fragrances into the air. The Queen led him to a bench beside a pool where luminous fish swam in lazy circles. Marcus, she said, turning to face him fully.
You are that prophesied being.
The scans we took during your journey here confirmed what our long-range observations suggested.
Your life force resonates at frequencies we have not seen in 3,000 years.
Marcus felt dizzy as the implications hit him.
I don't understand. I'm just an engineer. There's nothing special about me. Nothing special?
The Queen's laughter was like silver bells. You carry within you the key to our spiritual salvation. But, more than that, you carry something else we have long sought. Her expression grew serious.
The prophecy speaks not just of restoration, but of union.
The one who would heal our souls would also become the bridge between our people and the cosmos. She reached out and took his hand, her skin warm and soft against his. Marcus Chen of Earth, by order of the Extraterrestrial Court and the ancient laws of our people, I am bound to offer you a choice that will change both our worlds forever. Marcus stared at her, his mind reeling.
What kind of choice?
Marriage, she said simply. Union with me, the Queen of the Zalari, to fulfill the prophecy and unite our species in ways that mere diplomacy never could. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow.
Marriage? To an alien queen? To someone he had met mere hours ago?
It was insane, impossible, beyond anything he could have imagined. I know it seems overwhelming, the Queen continued, seeming to read his thoughts. But this is not a decision to be made lightly or quickly. You will have time to learn our ways, to understand what such a union would mean. The court has decreed that you will spend one full cycle of our homeworld seasons in preparation and consideration. Marcus found his voice at last. What if I refuse? Her expression grew sad but understanding. Then, you would be free to return to Earth with the thanks of our people and enough technology to advance your civilization by centuries. But the prophecy would remain unfulfilled, and my people would continue their spiritual decline. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders like a lead blanket. An entire civilization's spiritual future apparently rested on his decision. Yet how could he even consider marrying someone he didn't know, regardless of how beautiful and kind she seemed? What's your name? He asked suddenly. I mean, your actual name, not just your title. Her smile returned, warm and genuine. Lyrayli Ayana. But, my friends call me Lyra. Lyra, Marcus repeated, testing the name on his tongue. It suited her perfectly. If I were to consider this, what would it actually mean? What would be expected of me? You would learn our customs and our ways. You would study the ancient texts that speak of the restoration. And you would come to know me, as I would come to know you. She squeezed his hand gently. Marriage between our species has never occurred before. We would be writing the rules as we go. They talked for hours in that garden, Lyra explaining the basics of Zalari culture and society. Marcus learned that their civilization valued harmony above all else, that they had eliminated war and poverty centuries ago, and that they governed through consensus rather than force. The Queen was not a dictator but a spiritual leader who guided her people through wisdom rather than power. As the ship's artificial day cycle progressed toward evening, Marcus found himself increasingly drawn to Lyra. Her intelligence was obvious, but, more than that, she possessed a compassion and depth of understanding that transcended species. She listened to his questions and concerns without judgment, answering with patience and honesty. There is something else you should know, she said as they prepared to part for the evening. The prophecy speaks of love growing between the bridge-bearer and the Queen. Not immediate love, but love that develops through understanding and shared purpose. The union is meant to be real, not merely ceremonial. Marcus felt his cheeks burn with embarrassment. You're talking about a real marriage. With everything that entails. I am, she confirmed, though her tone remained gentle. But, only if genuine feelings develop between us. I would never force such intimacy, prophecy or no prophecy. That night, Marcus lay awake in his quarters, his mind churning with everything he had learned. The rational part of his brain insisted this was all insane. He was being asked to marry an alien queen to fulfill some ancient prophecy that might be nothing more than superstition. His life on Earth was modest but familiar. His job was steady, his future predictable. But another part of him, a part he had long suppressed, whispered different thoughts. When had he ever felt truly alive? When had anything in his mundane existence inspired the kind of wonder and possibility he felt now? And if he was honest with himself, he was already attracted to Lyra in ways that transcended physical appearance. The next morning brought a new revelation. Vexhai arrived with ceremonial robes similar to their own, explaining that Marcus would need to be formally presented to the Extraterrestrial court. This court, Marcus learned, was not just a Zalari institution but a gathering of representatives from dozens of species across the galaxy. Your presence here has caused quite a stir, Vexhai explained as they helped Marcus into the elaborate garments. Many species have prophecies of their own that may connect to yours. The court wishes to examine you themselves before any final decisions are made. The court convened in a chamber even more magnificent than the Queen's throne room. Representatives from dozens of species sat in concentric circles around a central platform. Marcus saw beings he could not have imagined, crystalline entities that sang in harmonious tones, gaseous beings contained in environmental suits, creatures that seemed to be made of living shadow, and others that defied description. At the center of it all sat a panel of 5 beings who apparently served as the court's judges. As Marcus was led to the platform, he felt hundreds of alien gazes focusing on him with intense interest. The proceedings were conducted in a language that his translation device could only partially interpret. There seemed to be multiple discussions happening simultaneously, with different species debating in languages that bypassed sound entirely. Through it all, Marcus stood as still as possible, feeling like a specimen being examined under a microscope. Finally, one of the judges addressed him directly. "Human Marcus Chen," the being said in perfectly clear English. "You stand before the court not as a representative of your species alone, but as a potential bridge between the material and spiritual realms. Do you understand the weight of what is being asked of you?" "I'm beginning to," Marcus replied, surprised by the steadiness of his own voice. "Though I admit much of this still seems impossible to me." Murmurs ran through the assembled beings, and Marcus caught fragments of translated conversation. Some seemed pleased by his honesty, while others appeared concerned about his uncertainty. Another judge leaned forward. "The prophecy speaks of one who would restore balance not just to the Zalari, but to all species who have lost their connection to the cosmic harmony. If you were to accept this role, you would become more than just a consort to a queen. You would become a focal point for spiritual evolution across the galaxy." The magnitude of what was being suggested made Marcus's head spin. He was just one man, a maintenance engineer who fixed broken machines. How could he possibly be responsible for the spiritual evolution of entire civilizations? "I need to understand something," Marcus said, addressing the court directly. "You're all talking about prophecies and cosmic harmony as if they're scientific facts. Where I come from, we tend to be more skeptical about such things. What proof do you have that any of this is real?" A third judge smiled, an expression that was unsettling on their angular, insectoid features. "An excellent question. Vexai, initiate the resonance test." Marcus felt a subtle change in the chamber's atmosphere. The air itself seemed to vibrate at frequencies just below the threshold of hearing. Then, something extraordinary happened. The various alien beings around the chamber began to glow with soft, internal light. The light pulsed in rhythm with the vibrations, creating a symphony of luminescence that was breathtakingly beautiful. "This is the harmonic resonance that all life once shared," the first judge explained. "Watch closely." Marcus gasped as he realized he was glowing too. A warm, golden light emanated from his skin, pulsing in perfect synchronization with the aliens around him. The sensation was indescribable, like every cell in his body was singing in harmony with the universe itself. "Your resonance is stronger than any we have measured in 3 millennia, the third judge said as the effect faded. "This is not superstition, human. This is a measurable, reproducible phenomenon. You possess a natural connection to the cosmic harmony that we had thought lost forever." The implications hit Marcus like a tsunami. This was real. All of it was real. He really did possess something unique, something that these advanced civilizations desperately needed. But that knowledge only made the decision more difficult. If he refused, he would be condemning countless beings to continued spiritual emptiness. If he accepted, he would be taking responsibility for more than any one person should have to bear. The court session continued for hours, with various species representatives asking Marcus questions about human culture, philosophy, and spirituality. Some seemed skeptical that such a young species could produce the prophesied bridge-bearer. Others argued that humanity's relative innocence was precisely what made them ideal candidates. Through it all, Marcus found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Lyra, who observed the proceedings from her own throne beside the judges' panel. She offered him encouraging smiles when the questions became particularly challenging, and he found strength in her presence that surprised him. As the session drew to a close, the chief judge addressed Marcus one final time. "You have shown wisdom in your questions and honesty in your answers. The court finds you worthy of consideration for the role described in the ancient prophecies. However, the decision ultimately rests with you and Queen Lyreliana. You will have the promised time to learn our ways and make your choice." As the court dispersed, Marcus felt emotionally drained. The weight of what had been revealed pressed down on him like a physical burden. When Lyra approached him, her violet eyes filled with concern, he nearly broke down entirely.
Come, she said softly, taking his arm. You need time to process everything you have learned. I have something to show you that might help. She led him to yet another part of the ship, this one clearly her private quarters. The space was more intimate than the grand chambers he had seen before, filled with personal items that spoke of a life lived with purpose and care. Books lined the walls, their covers decorated with symbols he could not read. Art from dozens of worlds created a tapestry of galactic culture. This is where I retreat when the weight of leadership becomes too heavy, Lyra said, settling onto a comfortable couch and patting the space beside her. Everyone needs a place where they can simply be themselves. Marcus joined her, grateful for the opportunity to sit down. How do you handle it? Being responsible for so much? I remember that I am not truly responsible for everything, she replied. I can guide, I can suggest, I can offer wisdom when I have it. But, ultimately, every being must choose their own path. Even you, Marcus. Even with the prophecy and the court's decree, the choice is yours alone. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the stress of the day gradually fading. Marcus found himself studying Lyra's profile as she gazed out a viewport at the stars beyond. She was beautiful, certainly, but there was so much more to her than physical appearance. She carried herself with quiet confidence, spoke with thoughtful intelligence, and treated everyone around her with genuine respect. Can I ask you something personal? Marcus said finally. Of course. Are you lonely? I mean, with all this responsibility and everyone looking up to you, do you ever feel isolated? Lyra turned to look at him, her expression soft and vulnerable. Every day. The crown brings many privileges, but genuine companionship is not one of them. Most people see me as a symbol rather than a person. They love what I represent but do not truly know who I am. Is that part of why this prophecy matters so much to you? Not just for your people, but for yourself? She was quiet for a long moment before answering. Perhaps. The prophecy speaks of true partnership, of two souls joining to create something greater than either could achieve alone. I have spent my entire life serving others. The idea of someone who might serve with me, as an equal rather than a subject. She trailed off, then looked at him directly. Yes, I admit that appeals to me greatly. Marcus felt something shift inside him, a recognition that went beyond physical attraction or even admiration. Here was someone who understood the weight of responsibility, the loneliness of leadership, the desire to find genuine connection despite the barriers that duty erected around them. What would happen to your people if the prophecy is never fulfilled? He asked. We would continue as we have, Lyra replied. We are not dying or in immediate danger. But we would remain spiritually incomplete, never reaching our full potential as conscious beings. Generation after generation would live good lives but never experience the transcendence our ancestors knew. Marcus nodded slowly, understanding. It was not a crisis in the traditional sense, but a slow, ongoing tragedy of unfulfilled potential. And, apparently, he held the key to ending it. The conversation continued late into the ship's night cycle. They talked about everything from their childhoods to their hopes for the future. Marcus learned that Lyra had never expected to become queen, that she had been third in line to the throne until tragic accidents claimed her older siblings. She had dedicated her life to being worthy of the crown she never wanted but had grown to cherish. In return, he shared his own story of growing up average in a world that often seemed to celebrate only extraordinary achievement. His decision to work in space had been driven by a desire to be part of something bigger than himself, even if his role was small. Perhaps that is precisely why you were chosen, Lyra said thoughtfully. The prophecy required someone who understood service without ego, contribution without glory. Someone who could be part of something greater while remaining grounded in humility. As they finally prepared to part for the evening, Marcus felt a connection to Lyra that went far beyond anything he had experienced before. It was not love, not yet, but it was the foundation upon which love might grow. The thought both excited and terrified him. Lyra, he said as she reached the door to her chambers. Thank you. For today, for your patience, for everything. She smiled, and, in that moment, Marcus caught a glimpse of what their future together might hold. Thank you for listening with an open heart, Marcus. Sleep well. Tomorrow, your real education begins. As Marcus returned to his own quarters, his mind buzzed with everything he had learned and experienced. The rational part of his brain continued to insist that this was all insane, that he should demand to be returned to Earth immediately. But another part, a part that was growing stronger by the hour, whispered that perhaps this was exactly where he was meant to be. The stakes were impossibly high, the responsibility overwhelming, and the unknowns numerous. But, for the first time in his life, Marcus Chin felt like he might be part of something truly extraordinary. Whether that would be enough to overcome his fears and doubts remained to be seen, but, as he drifted off to sleep, he found himself genuinely excited to find out. The next morning would bring new challenges and revelations as his education in Zalari culture and the deeper mysteries of the prophecy began in earnest. But, tonight, he simply marveled at how completely his life had changed in the space of a few days. Yesterday, he had been a lonely maintenance engineer fixing broken machines. Today, he was a potential bridge between worlds, carrying the hopes and dreams of countless beings across the galaxy. Tomorrow would reveal whether he had the courage to embrace a destiny he had never sought but might be exactly what both he and the universe needed. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur of education and discovery that challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about existence itself. Each morning began with lessons in Zalari history and culture, taught by scholars who had dedicated their lives to preserving ancient wisdom. The afternoons were spent in practical training, learning the customs and protocols that governed royal life. But the evenings belonged to Lyra. She had insisted on teaching him personally about the deeper aspects of their civilization, the spiritual practices that had evolved over millennia. What Marcus initially dismissed as mysticism gradually revealed itself to be something far more sophisticated. The Zalari had developed techniques for consciousness expansion that bordered on science, methods for perceiving reality that human science was only beginning to explore. Close your eyes, Lyra instructed as they sat in her private garden chamber. Feel the energy that flows through all living things. Marcus tried to focus, but his engineering mind resisted the abstract concepts. I don't feel anything unusual. Because you are trying to think your way to understanding, she said with infinite patience. Let go of analysis. Simply experience. They had been practicing these meditation techniques for a week, with limited success. Marcus could occasionally sense something beyond normal perception, fleeting moments of connection that vanished as soon as he tried to examine them. But Lyra assured him this was normal for someone from a species that had never developed such abilities. The ancient texts speak of a learning period, she explained. The bridge bearer would not immediately master what took our people millennia to develop. But the potential exists within you. I can see it growing stronger each day. Marcus opened his eyes to find her watching him with an expression of gentle concentration. Over the past weeks, he had grown accustomed to her beauty, but it still struck him at unexpected moments. More than her physical appearance, though, he was drawn to her mind. Lyra possessed an intellectual depth and emotional maturity that made their conversations endlessly fascinating. Can I ask you something that might sound insensitive? Marcus said. Of course. Do you actually believe in this prophecy, or is it something you have to believe in because of your position? Lyra was quiet for a long moment, her luminescent skin shifting through subtle color changes that Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. A fair question. When I first ascended to the throne, I assumed the prophecy was metaphorical. A symbolic representation of hope for spiritual renewal. But, then, our deep space monitors detected your world, and our analysts found references to Earth in texts that were thousands of years old. She gestured toward the viewport where Earth's sun was visible as a distant star. The texts described a blue world orbiting a yellow star in a specific region of the galaxy. They described a species that would develop space travel within a certain time frame. They even described the general appearance of the bridge bearer. When our scouts observed you specifically, the correlations became impossible to ignore. Marcus felt a chill. You've been watching me specifically? For how long? 2 of your years, Lyra admitted. Our long-range sensors detected the unique resonance pattern the prophecy described. We had to be certain before making contact. The invasion of privacy should have angered him, but Marcus found he was more curious than upset. What did you see that convinced you?
Lyra smiled, her skin taking on a warm golden hue. A man who took pride in maintaining the systems that kept others safe. Someone who worked extra shifts without complaint when colleagues were ill. A person who sent half his earnings to support his aging parents despite barely having enough for himself. Marcus blushed. He had never thought of those actions as particularly noteworthy. Character cannot be faked or forced, Lyra continued. The prophecy required someone with an inherently harmonious nature. Your actions revealed your heart long before we met. Their conversations had grown increasingly personal over the weeks. Marcus had learned about Lyra's childhood in the royal palace, her struggles with the expectations placed upon her, and her deep love for her people despite the burdens of leadership. In return, he had shared stories of growing up middle class on Earth, his dreams of space exploration, and his quiet dissatisfaction with a life that felt smaller than his ambitions. There is something I must show you, Lyra said, rising from their meditation spot. Something that will help you understand what acceptance of the prophecy would truly mean. She led him deeper into the ship than he had ever been before, through corridors that seemed older and more organic than the rest of the vessel. The walls here pulsed with their own internal light, and the air carried scents of exotic spices and growing things. This is the heart chamber, Lyra explained as they approached massive doors carved with intricate symbols. The spiritual center of our ship, and one of the most sacred places in Zalari culture. The doors opened at their approach, revealing a chamber that defied rational explanation. The space seemed far larger than the ship could possibly contain, stretching upward into misty depths illuminated by floating orbs of soft light. At the center grew what could only be described as a tree, though it was unlike any tree Marcus had ever seen. The trunk was crystalline, translucent material that seemed to contain flowing energy rather than sap. Its branches reached toward the misty ceiling, each one ending in clusters of leaves that glowed with their own inner fire. The entire structure pulsed gently, and Marcus could feel its rhythm synchronizing with his own heartbeat. The tree of synthesis, Lyra said reverently. Legend claims it grew from the first moment our people achieved spiritual harmony with the universe. It has been dying for 3,000 years. As they approached, Marcus could see what she meant. Many of the branches were withered and dark, their glow faded to nothing. Only about a third of the tree still showed vibrant life, and even those sections seemed dimmer than they should be. This is why the prophecy matters so much, Lyra explained, placing her hand on the crystalline trunk. This tree is not just a symbol. It is a living representation of our spiritual connection to the cosmos. As we have lost that connection, the tree has died. When it dies completely, your people will lose their spiritual abilities entirely, Marcus finished, understanding flooding through him. Yes. We will become purely technological beings, cut off forever from the harmony our ancestors knew. Marcus approached the tree carefully, drawn by an inexplicable urge to touch its surface. The moment his palm made contact with the crystal bark, the chamber exploded with light and sensation. Visions flooded his mind faster than he could process them. He saw the Zalari as they once were, beings of pure energy and consciousness who had learned to manipulate matter through will alone. He witnessed their gradual transformation as they developed technology, trading spiritual power for material advancement. He felt the slow, agonizing disconnection as generation after generation lost more of their ancestral abilities. But the visions showed more than just loss. They revealed potential futures where the connection was restored, where the Zalari regained their spiritual heritage while maintaining their technological achievements. In these visions, Marcus saw himself standing beside Lyra as partners in more than just marriage. He saw them working together to bridge the gap between matter and spirit, helping not just the Zalari but dozens of species across the galaxy. When the visions faded, Marcus found himself on his knees before the tree, tears streaming down his face. Lyra knelt beside him, her own eyes bright with unshed tears. "You saw them," she whispered. "The possible futures." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. The experience had been overwhelming, but also profoundly moving. For the first time, he truly understood what was at stake and what role he might play in preventing a cosmic tragedy. "The tree responded to you," Lyra said in wonder. "Look." Marcus raised his eyes to see that several of the withered branches near where he had touched were beginning to glow again, faint but unmistakable. The sight filled him with a mixture of awe and terror.
If his mere touch could begin to heal something so fundamental to Zalari existence, what would full acceptance of his role accomplish?
They spent hours in the heart chamber while Lyra explained the deeper mysteries of her people's spirituality. Marcus learned that the Zalari had once been capable of feats that seemed like magic to human understanding: instantaneous communication across vast distances, healing through directed consciousness, even limited manipulation of space and time. These abilities were not supernatural, Lyra explained. They were natural expressions of consciousness operating in harmony with universal forces.
Your scientists are beginning to discover quantum mechanics, the understanding that observation affects reality. Our ancestors took this knowledge much further.
Marcus found the concepts fascinating but still struggled with the practical implications.
Even if I can somehow help restore these abilities, I'm just one human. How can I possibly be the bridge for an entire galactic civilization?
Because the restoration spreads, Lyra said.
The prophecy speaks of the bridge bearer as a catalyst.
Once the connection is re-established in the Zalari, it will spread to other species who have lost their own spiritual heritage.
Like a chain reaction across the galaxy.
The magnitude of it was staggering.
Marcus was not just being asked to marry an alien queen or even help a single species.
He was potentially the key to a galactic spiritual renaissance that would affect countless worlds and civilizations. That night, Marcus lay awake wrestling with the decision that grew more complex with each passing day. The rational arguments for returning to Earth were compelling, the whole situation was unprecedented, the responsibility was overwhelming, and he would be giving up everything familiar for a future he could barely comprehend. But the arguments for staying were equally powerful. He had never felt more alive than he did in the company of these remarkable beings. His growing connection to Lyra was unlike anything he had experienced, a partnership of minds and hearts that seemed to strengthen both of them. And, after witnessing the tree's response to his touch, he could no longer deny that he possessed abilities that might truly make a difference.
The next morning brought a new development that would complicate his decision even further. Ambassador Vexhai arrived at his quarters with news from Earth.
Your government has been contacted, Vexhai explained, their emotional colors cycling through nervous patterns.
They are demanding your immediate return. Marcus felt his stomach drop.
What did you tell them?
The truth.
That you are here voluntarily and free to leave at any time.
However, they seem to believe you have been coerced or manipulated.
Vexhai paused, their skin shifting to apologetic blues. They have threatened to consider your continued presence here an act of kidnapping. The situation had become political, Marcus realized. Earth's governments were undoubtedly worried about how it would look if one of their citizens married into alien royalty without their approval.
The implications for human-Zalari relations could be severe. What does the Queen suggest? Marcus asked.
She believes you should speak directly with your leaders. A transmission has been arranged for this afternoon. Marcus spent the morning preparing for what would certainly be a difficult conversation.
Earth's political establishment would see his potential marriage as either a betrayal of human interests or an opportunity to be exploited.
Either way, they would pressure him to make decisions based on political calculations rather than personal conviction. The transmission chamber was equipped with quantum communication technology that allowed real-time conversation across interstellar distances. As the connection established, Marcus found himself facing a panel of Earth's most senior political and military leaders, including the Secretary General of the United Nations.
Mr. Chen, the Secretary General began without preamble, we need you to return to Earth immediately. Your continued presence with the aliens is creating a diplomatic crisis.
Marcus had expected this approach. With respect, sir, I'm here voluntarily. I haven't been coerced or threatened.
Perhaps not directly, interjected General Harrison, head of Earth's Space Defense Force.
But, you're clearly being manipulated. These aliens specifically requested you, Mr. Chen.
They've been watching you.
This isn't coincidence, it's a carefully orchestrated plan.
To what end? Marcus asked. What would they gain from manipulating me? Leverage over humanity, the Secretary General replied. Think about it, Mr. Chen. If you marry their queen, they have a human in their royal family. They can claim to speak for human interests, to represent us in galactic politics.
The argument had merit, Marcus admitted to himself. But it assumed malicious intent on the part of the Zalari, an assumption his experiences did not support. Have you considered, Marcus said carefully, that they might genuinely want alliance and partnership rather than domination? We've considered it, admitted Dr. Sarah Chen, Earth's chief xenobiologist and no relation despite the shared surname. But we can't base policy on hope. These beings possess technology centuries ahead of ours. If their intentions change, we would be helpless. The conversation continued for over an hour, with Earth's leaders alternating between appeals to his patriotism and warnings about the dangers of trusting alien motivations. Marcus answered their questions honestly while growing increasingly frustrated with their inability to see beyond political paranoia. There's something you need to understand, Marcus finally said. This isn't just about marriage or politics. The Zalari have spiritual knowledge that could benefit all of humanity. They're not trying to control us, they're trying to share wisdom that took them millennia to develop. Spiritual knowledge? General Harrison scoffed. Mr. Chen, you're an engineer. Since when do you believe in mysticism? Since I experience things that your current scientific paradigms can't explain, Marcus replied firmly. I've seen demonstrations of consciousness affecting reality in measurable ways. The Zalari have developed abilities that we would consider impossible. The panel exchanged glances that suggested they thought he had been brainwashed. Marcus realized that trying to explain his experiences was hopeless. They would have to see for themselves to believe. I'm not asking you to understand or approve, Marcus said. I'm simply informing you that I plan to complete my time here and make an informed decision about my future. You can't force me to return, and, frankly, your threats are counterproductive. The transmission ended on a tense note, with Earth's leaders making it clear that they considered his continued presence a betrayal of human interests. Marcus felt the weight of representing not just himself but his entire species in whatever decision he ultimately made. Lyra was waiting when he emerged from the transmission chamber, her empathic abilities having undoubtedly sensed his emotional turmoil. They do not approve, she observed. They think you're manipulating me for political advantage, Marcus said bluntly. They can't understand that this might be about anything more than power and control. Lyra nodded sadly. It is the curse of purely technological civilizations. They lose the ability to perceive anything beyond material concerns. She placed a comforting hand on his arm. But their disapproval does not have to determine your choice. Doesn't it, though? Marcus asked. If I stay, I might be damaging relations between our species. If Earth sees the Zalari as enemies because of my decision, both our peoples could suffer. Or, Lyra suggested gently, your choice could prove that cooperation is possible. That humans and Zalari can work together despite political tensions. That evening, Marcus requested time alone to think. He walked through the ship's observation decks, staring out at the stars while wrestling with a decision that seemed impossible no matter how he approached it. His contemplation was interrupted by an unexpected visitor, Captain Torres, the pilot who had transported him from Luna Station weeks earlier. Marcus was surprised to see him still aboard the Zalari vessel. Captain? I thought you had returned to Earth. I requested permission to remain and observe, Torres explained. Officially, I'm gathering intelligence on alien capabilities. Unofficially, I wanted to understand what was happening to you. They walked together in silence for a while before Torres spoke again. I've been watching, Mr. Chen. Watching how they treat you, how they treat each other, how they've treated me as a guest despite my obvious role as a spy. Marcus raised an eyebrow. And, what have you concluded? That your government is wrong about their intentions, Torres said firmly. These people aren't trying to manipulate or control anyone. They're trying to share something they consider precious. And, frankly, after seeing some of what they can do, I think humanity would be idiots to reject it. Marcus was surprised by the pilot's assessment. You've seen demonstrations of their abilities? Queen Lyraliana healed my chronic back pain with nothing but focused intention, Torres said. 20 years of agony, gone in minutes. When I asked how, she tried to explain about consciousness and energy fields and harmonic resonance. I didn't understand half of it, but I can't argue with results. They paused at a viewing port overlooking the heart chamber. Through the transparent walls, Marcus could see the tree of synthesis glowing softly in the distance.
There's something else, Torres continued. I've been monitoring Earth communications. The political situation is getting worse.
There are protests demanding your return, conspiracy theories about alien mind control, even some calling for military action against the Zalari ship. Marcus felt his heart sink. It's becoming exactly the kind of crisis Earth's leaders warned about.
Maybe, Torres agreed.
Or maybe it's an opportunity to prove that cooperation is possible.
You know what I think, Mr. Chen?
I think you're scared. The blunt assessment stung because it contained truth.
Of course I'm scared. Wouldn't you be? Terrified, Torres admitted.
But I've also seen how you look at Queen Lyraliana, and how she looks at you.
I've watched you both light up when you're together.
If you walk away from this because of fear or political pressure, you'll regret it for the rest of your life. Torres left him alone after that, but his words echoed in Marcus's mind long into the night.
Was he allowing fear to mask itself as rational caution? Was he looking for excuses to avoid a responsibility he felt unequal to bear? The next day brought yet another complication.
During his morning lessons with the Zalari scholars, Marcus learned about the formal marriage ceremony that would be required if he chose to accept the prophecy. The bonding of souls, explained Master Scholar Thyron, is not merely a legal or social contract. It is a spiritual joining that creates permanent changes in both participants. Marcus felt his pulse quicken.
What kind of changes?
Enhanced empathic connection, shared access to spiritual energies, and, most significantly, extended lifespan to match that of your partner.
The last point hit Marcus like a physical blow. Extended lifespan? How extended?
Queen Lyraliana is currently 847 years old by your reckoning, Thyron said matter-of-factly. She appears to be in what humans would consider the prime of life and will remain so for several more centuries. Marcus stared at the scholar in shock.
Lyra was nearly 900 years old?
She looked no older than 30 by human standards, but she had been alive since before human civilization developed spaceflight. I can see this disturbs you, Thyron observed.
Does the age difference concern you?
It's not that exactly, Marcus said slowly, trying to process this revelation. But, if the bonding ceremony would extend my lifespan to match hers, we're talking about living for potentially thousands of years together.
Yes.
The prophecy requires permanent partnership, not merely a temporary alliance.
The spiritual bridge between species must be maintained across generations. The implications were staggering.
Marcus was not just being asked to marry Lyra, but to fundamentally alter his nature as a human being. He would outlive everyone he had ever known on Earth, watching his entire species evolve while he remained essentially unchanged. When he shared this revelation with Lyra that evening, she was surprised by his shock. I assumed you understood this aspect of the bonding, she said apologetically. In Zalari culture, marriage is always considered a permanent joining of souls. The concept of choosing a partner for only a portion of one's life is foreign to us.
But, you didn't think to mention that you're nearly 900 years old? Marcus asked, trying to keep accusation out of his voice. Lyra's skin shifted to embarrassed purples. Time has different meaning for long-lived species.
In my mind, I am still young, still learning and growing. The number of years seems less important than the experiences gained. They talked deep into the night about the implications of extended lifespan, about watching civilizations rise and fall, about the loneliness of outliving everyone you initially care about. Lyra shared stories of friends and mentors who had aged and died while she remained young, of the strange melancholy that came with extreme longevity. But there are compensations, she said. The depth of experience possible across centuries, the opportunity to see your actions affect multiple generations, the chance to truly master skills and knowledge. Marcus tried to imagine living for 1,000 years, seeing humanity develop and change while he remained essentially static. The thought was both exhilarating and terrifying.
Would I still be human? He asked.
Enhanced human, Lyra replied. The bonding process does not change your fundamental nature, merely amplifies your existing capabilities and synchronizes your biological processes with mine. As their time together continued, Marcus found himself increasingly torn between desire and doubt. His connection to Lyra had grown stronger every day, evolving from attraction and admiration into something deeper and more meaningful. She was brilliant, compassionate, and possessed a depth of character that came from centuries of experience and growth. But the magnitude of what acceptance would mean continued to overwhelm him. He would be giving up not just his old life but his very humanity as he understood it. He would be taking responsibility for the spiritual evolution of countless species across the galaxy. And he would be doing it all based on ancient prophecies and mystical concepts that his scientific training still struggled to accept. The growing political crisis on Earth added another layer of pressure. Daily reports from Captain Torres painted a picture of increasing paranoia and hostility toward the Zalari. If Marcus accepted the prophecy, he might be providing fuel for those who wanted to see the aliens as enemies rather than allies. Yet every time he considered returning to Earth, he felt a sense of loss that went beyond giving up his relationship with Lyra. He would be abandoning the most significant opportunity in human history, walking away from the chance to truly make a difference on a cosmic scale. The decision point was rapidly approaching, and Marcus still had no idea what choice he would ultimately make. All he knew was that whatever he decided would change everything, not just for him but, potentially for the entire galaxy. The attack came without warning on the 57th day of Marcus's stay aboard the Zalari vessel. He was in the heart chamber with Lyra, practicing the advanced meditation techniques that had finally begun to yield consistent results, when alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The crystalline walls flashed urgent red patterns while automated voices announced emergency protocols in a dozen languages. Battle stations, Lyra said grimly, her skin immediately shifting to the deep indigo that Marcus had learned indicated extreme concern. Someone is attacking us. They rushed to the command center, where Vexhai and the ship's senior officers were coordinating defensive measures. The main display showed a formation of unfamiliar vessels approaching at high speed, their hulls bristling with weapons that were already charging for an assault. Who are they? Marcus asked as he watched the tactical display update with increasingly dire projections. Hegemony forces, Captain Torres reported from his observer station. And they're broadcasting human identification codes. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice. Earth-sent warships? Worse, Torres said, his face pale as he monitored the communications. These appear to be mercenaries hired by a coalition of Earth corporations. The identification codes are falsified, but the energy signatures match human weapon systems. The implications hit Marcus like a physical blow. Earth's governments might have officially opposed his presence here, but corporate interests had apparently decided to take direct action. If they could eliminate the Zalari leadership and blame it on a failed diplomatic mission, they would have justification for seizing alien technology through defensive measures. They're not responding to our hails, reported the communications officer. All attempts at dialogue are being ignored. Marcus watched in horror as the attacking ships opened fire without further warning. Energy beams lanced across space, striking the Zalari vessel's shields with devastating force. The ship shuddered under the impact, and Marcus could hear the strain on the defensive systems through the hull's harmonic vibrations. How long can we withstand this assault? Lyra asked calmly, though her skin continued to cycle through distressed colors. Unknown, replied the tactical officer. Their weapons are primitive but numerous. Our shields will hold for now, but prolonged bombardment will eventually overwhelm them. What about our own weapons? Marcus asked. Vexhai looked uncomfortable. We possess defensive capabilities, but the Zalari have not engaged in armed conflict for over a millennium. Our weapon systems are designed primarily for clearing space debris and asteroid mining. The situation was becoming desperate. The attacking ships maintained their barrage while maneuvering to surround the Zalari vessel, cutting off any possibility of escape. Marcus realized with growing dread that this might be exactly what Earth's corporate interests wanted, the destruction of the alien ship with him aboard, providing justification for any future aggression against the Zalari. There has to be something we can do, Marcus said urgently. Some way to defend ourselves without escalating to full combat. Lyra was quiet for a moment, her expression thoughtful despite the chaos around them. There is one possibility, she said slowly.
But it would require you to make your decision about the prophecy right now, under the most difficult circumstances imaginable. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do you mean?
The ancient texts speak of the bridge-bearer's power extending beyond spiritual matters, Lyra explained. In times of great crisis, the bonded pair could access defensive capabilities that transcended normal technology.
You're talking about using spiritual powers to stop an armed attack?
I am talking about demonstrating that consciousness can affect reality in ways your attackers cannot comprehend or counter, Lyra said firmly. But it would require the full bonding ceremony, completed while under fire.
And there would be no going back afterward.
Marcus stared at her in disbelief. She was asking him to make the most important decision of his life while explosions rocked the ship around them, to commit to a future he still barely understood while human weapons tried to kill them both. Another massive impact shook the vessel, and sparks flew from overloaded control systems.
The shield indicators showed declining power levels as the sustained bombardment took its toll. How much time do we have? Marcus asked.
Perhaps an hour before our defenses fail completely, Vexhai reported. Marcus closed his eyes, trying to think clearly amid the chaos. Everything he had learned over the past 2 months, every conversation with Lyra, every glimpse of potential futures seemed to compress into this single moment of choice. He could feel the weight of cosmic destiny bearing down on him while human greed and fear literally tried to destroy any possibility of transcendence. Marcus, Lyra said softly, taking his hand. I will not ask you to choose based on crisis or fear. If you say no, we will find another way to survive this. But, if you are going to say yes, it must be because you truly want this future, not because circumstances force it upon you. He looked into her violet eyes and saw love there, genuine and deep. Over the weeks, their connection had evolved from political necessity into something real and powerful. She had never pressured him, never manipulated him, never made him feel like his choice was predetermined. Even now, facing potential death, she was giving him the freedom to choose his own path. The bonding ceremony, Marcus said.
How long does it take?
Under normal circumstances, several hours of preparation and ritual, Lyra replied.
But, in extreme need, the essential components can be completed in minutes.
Marcus felt a strange calm settling over him as the decision crystallized. He thought about his life on Earth, the quiet satisfaction of maintaining systems that kept people safe, the lonely evenings spent dreaming of something more meaningful. Then, he thought about the past 2 months, the wonder of discovering that consciousness could touch the infinite, the deep partnership he had found with Lyra, the possibility of helping entire civilizations reach their spiritual potential. The choice was not really between Earth and the stars. It was between fear and possibility, between the small life he had always known and the cosmic significance he had never dared to imagine.
I choose you, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them.
I choose this future, whatever it brings. Lyra's smile was radiant, her skin shifting to brilliant gold as joy mixed with relief and determination.
Then, we must begin immediately.
The essential bonding ceremony was unlike anything Marcus had expected. There were no elaborate rituals or mystical props, just Lyra leading him to the heart chamber where the tree of synthesis waited. As explosions continued to rock the ship around them, they stood before the ancient crystalline structure and joined hands. Speak your truth, Lyra said, her voice taking on formal cadences despite the urgency of their situation. Why do you choose this path? Marcus looked into her eyes and found words coming from depths he did not know he possessed.
Because I love you. Because I believe in what we can become together.
Because the universe is vast and full of wonder, and I want to help others find the connection to that wonder that you have shown me. And I choose you, Lyra responded, because your heart resonates with harmony despite never having known it before. Because your courage grows stronger in the face of challenge.
Because together we can bridge the gap between matter and spirit, between what is and what could be.
As they spoke, the tree of synthesis began to glow more brightly. The withered branches that had been dark for millennia suddenly blazed with new life, filling the chamber with warm, golden light. Marcus felt energy flowing between himself and Lyra, their consciousness beginning to merge and synchronize in ways that defied description. The sensations were overwhelming.
Marcus could feel Lyra's thoughts and emotions as clearly as his own, could sense the vast network of connections that linked all conscious beings across the galaxy.
His perception expanded beyond the confines of his individual existence, touching something infinite and eternal. But the most remarkable change was in his understanding of the attacking ships. Where before he had seen only human-built vessels firing weapons, now he perceived the consciousness of their crews, the fear and greed that motivated their assault, the corporate manipulation that had sent them here to destroy rather than understand.
"I can feel them," Marcus said in wonder. "Their minds, their intentions."
"Then, you can reach them," Lyra said, her voice echoing strangely in the expanded awareness they now shared.
"Show them what they are truly attacking."
Marcus reached out with his enhanced consciousness, touching the minds of the attacking crews across the vast distance of space. What he found there was not evil but ignorance, not malice but misunderstanding. They had been told they were preventing humanity's enslavement, stopping an alien plot to control their species.
With Lyra's help, Marcus began to project truth directly into their awareness. He showed them the beauty of Zalari civilization, the genuine desire for partnership rather than domination, the spiritual knowledge that could elevate all species rather than enslaving them.
Most importantly, he showed them his own experience, the growth and wonder he had found through choosing love over fear. The effect was immediate and profound. One by one, the attacking ships ceased fire as their crews experienced the reality of what they had been sent to destroy. Marcus felt their shock, their dawning horror at what they had almost accomplished, their growing wonder at the possibilities they had nearly obliterated.
"This is impossible," came a transmission from the lead attack ship. "We're detecting some kind of... I don't know what to call it. Enhanced consciousness? Our instruments are going crazy."
"This is Marcus Chen," Marcus replied, his voice carrying across space with new authority and depth. "I'm speaking to you not as a victim of alien manipulation, but as a human who has chosen to embrace something greater than either of our species could achieve alone."
The comm channels erupted with confused voices as the mercenary crews tried to process what they were experiencing.
Through his expanded awareness, Marcus could feel their worldviews shifting as direct experience of spiritual reality challenged everything they thought they knew about existence. "Stand down your weapons," Marcus continued. "Return to Earth and tell them what you have seen here. Tell them that first contact is not about conquest or control, but about the chance to grow beyond the limitations that have held us back for millennia."
To his amazement, the attacking ships began powering down their weapons. The assault that had threatened to destroy everything suddenly transformed into humanity's first real glimpse of cosmic consciousness.
But the crisis was not over. Even as the immediate threat receded, Marcus could sense through his expanded awareness that Earth's governments were preparing an even larger response. The mercenary attack had been just the beginning. "They will send more ships," Lyra said, her thoughts flowing seamlessly into his enhanced consciousness. "Earth's leaders will see what happened here as confirmation of their worst fears about alien mind control." "Then, we need to get ahead of this," Marcus replied. "We need to show them the truth before fear and misunderstanding make peaceful contact impossible." Over the next several hours, as Marcus adjusted to his transformed state of consciousness, he and Lyra developed a plan that would either secure peaceful relations between their species or guarantee eternal conflict. They would return to Earth. Not as conqueror and conquered, not as alien queen and brainwashed human, but as partners demonstrating that cooperation between species was not only possible but beneficial to all involved. They would face Earth's leaders directly, submit to any examinations or tests required to prove Marcus's continued free will, and offer to share the spiritual knowledge that could help humanity reach its full potential. The decision was incredibly risky. Earth's governments might see their arrival as an invasion attempt, might imprison or worse both of them despite any diplomatic protections. But Marcus could see through his enhanced perception that it was the only way to prevent escalating conflict that could destroy any chance of peaceful coexistence. The Extraterrestrial Court must approve such a mission, Vex High pointed out when they presented the plan to the ship's council. "Sending our queen into potentially hostile territory violates every security protocol we have." "The court will approve," Lyra said with quiet confidence. "The prophecy requires the bridge-bearer to serve as liaison between species." This is exactly what was foretold. The formal presentation to the court took place via quantum communication, with representatives from dozens of species debating the wisdom of allowing their most important leader to enter what might be a trap. Marcus found that his enhanced abilities allowed him to sense the emotions and intentions of beings across interstellar distances, giving him insights into galactic politics that no human had ever possessed. "The risk is enormous," admitted one of the court's judges. "If harm comes to Queen Lyreliana, the consequences for human consortium relations could be severe." "And if we do not take this risk," Marcus replied, "fear and misunderstanding will poison any chance of genuine cooperation. Earth's leaders need to see that partnership is possible, that their concerns about manipulation and control are unfounded." The debate continued for hours, with various species offering perspectives based on their own first contact experiences. Some had faced similar challenges when joining the consortium, while others had experienced conflicts that lasted for generations before resolution was achieved. Finally, the senior judge addressed Marcus and Lyra directly. "The court recognizes that extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary responses. You have our permission to attempt this diplomatic mission, but with strict conditions. You will be accompanied by a full diplomatic escort, you will submit to any reasonable examinations Earth's leaders require, and you will withdraw immediately if the situation becomes hostile." Marcus felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. They had permission to attempt the most important diplomatic mission in human history, but the stakes could not be higher. Success could usher in an era of unprecedented cooperation and growth for humanity. Failure might condemn both species to eternal suspicion and conflict. The journey to Earth took 3 days, during which Marcus continued to adapt to his transformed state. The bonding with Lyra had enhanced every aspect of his consciousness while leaving his fundamental personality intact. He was still himself, but vastly expanded in his ability to perceive and interact with reality. The most remarkable change was in his connection to other conscious beings. He could sense the emotional states and basic intentions of everyone around him, could feel the vast web of relationships that connected all thinking creatures. It was overwhelming at first, but Lyra taught him techniques for managing the constant input without losing his individual identity. "This is what all consciousness could be," she explained during one of their meditation sessions. "The barriers between individual minds are largely artificial, constructed by species who have forgotten their connection to the greater whole." Marcus found the concept both beautiful and disturbing. Don't we need individual identity? Doesn't consciousness require separation to exist? Individual identity remains, Lyra assured him. But it need not require isolation. Think of it like instruments in an orchestra. Each plays its own part, maintains its unique voice, but contributes to a harmony greater than any could achieve alone. As Earth grew larger in their viewport, Marcus felt the weight of responsibility settling on his transformed consciousness. He would soon face the leaders of his birth world as something more and less than human, carrying the hopes of countless species for peaceful coexistence. The reception was everything he had feared and more. Earth's defensive fleets surrounded the Zalari vessel the moment it entered the solar system, weapons trained but not yet firing. Demands for immediate surrender competed with diplomatic overtures as various factions within Earth's government struggled for control of the situation. "This is Admiral Richardson of the Earth Defense Force," came the official communication. "By order of the United Nations Security Council, you are commanded to halt your approach and prepare to be boarded for inspection." "This is Queen Lyreliana of the Zalari Consortium," Lyra replied with calm dignity. "We come in peace, seeking dialogue with your leaders. We will submit to any reasonable inspection, but we request formal diplomatic status for this mission." The negotiations that followed were tense and complex, with Earth's leaders clearly torn between fear of alien infiltration and curiosity about the advanced technology the Zalari possessed. Eventually, an agreement was reached. Marcus and Lyra would be allowed to land at the United Nations headquarters in New York, but under heavy guard and with strict limitations on their movements. The landing itself drew massive crowds and worldwide media attention. Marcus watched through the shuttle's viewports as thousands of humans gathered to witness their first direct contact with alien royalty. The mixture of excitement, fear, and wonder in the crowd was palpable even through his enhanced senses. The formal reception in the UN General Assembly was unlike anything in diplomatic history. Representatives from every nation on Earth watched as Marcus and Lyra entered the Great Hall, accompanied by their Zalari diplomatic escort and surrounded by heavily armed human security forces. Secretary General Martinez opened the proceedings with carefully neutral words. We welcome you to Earth while maintaining our concerns about the unusual circumstances that have brought us together. The international community has many questions about your intentions and about the status of our citizen who has apparently undergone significant changes while in your custody. Marcus stepped forward, feeling the weight of every gaze in the assembly. I am Marcus Chen, still a citizen of Earth and still fully in possession of my free will. I have undergone changes, yes, but they were chosen freely and represent enhancement rather than diminishment of my human nature. Murmurs ran through the assembly as representatives noted his altered appearance. The bonding process had given Marcus a subtle luminescence similar to Lyra's, and his eyes now held depths that seemed to reflect cosmic awareness. Can you prove that your will remains your own? Demanded Ambassador Petrov of Russia. How do we know you have not been subjected to advanced forms of mental conditioning? Marcus had expected this question and prepared for it. I submit to any examinations you wish to conduct. Brain scans, psychological evaluations, interrogation under any conditions you consider necessary. But I also ask that you consider the evidence of my actions and words, not just the fact that I appear different from when I left Earth. The examination process was exhaustive and occasionally hostile. Earth's finest scientists subjected Marcus to every test they could devise, searching for evidence of mental manipulation or alien control. What they found instead was enhanced neural activity in areas associated with empathy and consciousness, but no signs of external influence or coercion. His brain patterns are definitely altered, reported Dr. Sarah Chan after 3 days of intensive testing. But the changes appear to be evolutionary rather than manipulative. If anything, his cognitive abilities have been enhanced while his core personality remains intact. The real breakthrough came when Marcus agreed to demonstrate his enhanced abilities under controlled conditions. In a specially prepared chamber, observed by dozens of scientists and security personnel, he reached out with his consciousness to touch the minds of volunteers from around the world. The results were extraordinary. Marcus could accurately perceive the emotional states and basic thoughts of people on different continents, could sense their intentions and feelings with perfect accuracy. More importantly, he could share his own experiences directly, allowing the observers to feel for themselves what the bonding process had accomplished. This is not technology, breathed Dr. Elizabeth Warren, one of Earth's leading neuroscientists. This appears to be consciousness operating through mechanisms we don't understand. The implications for human potential are staggering. As word of these demonstrations spread, public opinion began to shift. The idea that humans might be capable of such expanded awareness, that consciousness itself might be more than just brain activity, captured imaginations around the world. Scientific institutions demanded access to study these phenomena, while spiritual leaders proclaimed vindication of ancient wisdom about human potential. But the real test came when Marcus and Lyra addressed the full General Assembly, broadcasting to the entire world their vision of what human-Zalari cooperation could accomplish. We offer not conquest but partnership, Lyra said, her voice carrying across the globe. Not subjugation but elevation. The knowledge my people have developed over millennia is available to share, but only if it is desired freely and understood fully. Marcus added his voice to hers, speaking as both human and bridge between worlds. I have seen what we could become if we overcome our fears and embrace the possibilities that await us among the stars. Not as subjects or servants, but as equals contributing our own unique gifts to a galactic community. The response was immediate and polarized. Progressive nations and organizations embraced the possibilities, while conservative factions denounced the entire situation as an elaborate deception designed to weaken human independence. Protests erupted in major cities, with some demanding immediate acceptance of Zalari cooperation and others calling for complete rejection of alien contact. The debate raged for weeks as humanity struggled to decide its future. Marcus and Lyra remained on Earth during this time, living under diplomatic protection while serving as living examples of successful human-alien cooperation. Every day brought new challenges as various groups attempted to use their presence for political advantage. The crisis reached its peak when a coalition of militant organizations attempted to assassinate both Marcus and Lyra during a public appearance at the United Nations. The attack failed, not because of human security measures but because Marcus sensed the assault before it began and was able to neutralize the weapons through focused consciousness alone. The dramatic rescue, broadcast live around the world, finally tipped public opinion in favor of accepting Zalari cooperation. Seeing Marcus use enhanced abilities to protect rather than harm, demonstrating that increased consciousness led to greater compassion rather than greater power over others, convinced even many skeptics that the partnership offered genuine benefits. The formal treaty signing took place 6 months after Marcus and Lyra's arrival on Earth. In a ceremony that combined human diplomatic traditions with Zalari's spiritual practices, humanity officially joined the galactic community as junior partners in the consortium. Marcus stood beside Lyra as the documents were signed, no longer the maintenance engineer who had stumbled into cosmic significance but a genuine bridge between species and a symbol of what conscious cooperation could accomplish. The choice he had made under fire had led not just to personal transformation but to the elevation of his entire species.
"What happens now?" asked Secretary General Martinez as the ceremony concluded.
"Now the real work begins," Lyra replied, her hand finding Marcus's with practiced ease. "Learning to share knowledge across species, developing new technologies that combine human creativity with Zalari wisdom, and gradually expanding consciousness throughout the galaxy." Marcus looked out at the assembled representatives of humanity and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. The future stretched ahead, vast and full of possibilities that no human had ever imagined. There would be challenges, certainly, and setbacks along the way. But humanity had taken its first steps toward cosmic citizenship, guided by the most unlikely of bridges between worlds. As they left the assembly hall together, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a routine maintenance shift on Luna Station to standing as consort to an alien queen and architect of humanity's galactic future, his life had become something far beyond his wildest dreams.
"Any regrets?" Lyra asked softly, sensing his contemplative mood through their enhanced connection.
Marcus considered the question seriously. He had given up his old life, his purely human nature, even the possibility of a normal lifespan tied to his birth species. He would outlive everyone he had originally known and loved, would carry responsibilities that sometimes felt overwhelming, would face challenges that no human had ever encountered. "None," he said finally, meaning it completely.
"This is exactly where I'm supposed to be."
Together, they walked toward a future that would transform not just their two species but consciousness itself throughout the galaxy. The prophecy had been fulfilled, the bridge established, and the real adventure was only beginning. In the distance, the first human students were already preparing to journey to Zalari worlds for advanced education and consciousness expansion, while Zalari scholars planned extended stays on Earth to study human creativity and innovation. Children born of both species would grow up in a universe where the boundaries between matter and spirit, between individual and cosmic consciousness, would continue to dissolve. Marcus Chen had secured his place not just as the Queen's husband, but as the first human to truly understand what it meant to be a conscious being in a universe full of infinite possibility. And that, he realized, was exactly the kind of extraordinary life he had always secretly hoped to live.